Well, what could this be? Maybe not what you would expect based on the box, because even though it says 550 HG Griptilian, and even though it says Benchmade and has the iconic butterfly, what's inside is not a Benchmade. In fact, something very different. It is a Hinderer XM-18 3.5 inch Spanto ground knife with blue anodizing and a custom lightning strike carbon fiber scale. I just got this in yesterday and got it home last night and put a wicked edge on it, and I'm not entirely sure how long I'm going to have this, so I decided to go ahead and do a review now while I've got it. See if we can zoom in. I don't know if this has been sharpened a bunch of times or if it just has a particularly thick blade behind the edge. It seems thicker on the bevel right here than what I've seen on other Hinderers, and I only had the wicked edge set to 20 degrees per side, so I'm not sure what is up with that. Maybe it's not truly 20 degrees, or I don't know, but anyway, it looks very nice now, and definitely very, very sharp. But I saw this up for sale on a Facebook group, Hinderer Facebook group, and decided, you know, based on the price and all that, it was time to try out a real Hinderer. I've had several Hinderer design knives, but never an actual Hinderer. So I decided to go ahead and try it, and the price was good enough that if I didn't like it, I could go ahead and sell it and not lose a bunch of money. And I see the first thing that I noticed, definitely this is a third generation Hinderer, I believe, and I definitely noticed what people are talking about when they say they don't like the Hinderer detent. Boy, that's pretty mushy. That detent is just almost non-existent. Kind of. It's there. It holds the blade closed okay. I'm a little worried about it coming out in my pocket because I'm not doing this very hard, and the tip is leaving. I had my 452 CF come out in my pocket the other day. I think when I went to do my duty in the restroom, and I think the knife ended up landing on the flipper tab, and it actually came open in my pocket. And that knife has a very, very strong detent. ZT really knows what to do with their detents. Very snappy, very crisp, very strong. And that came open in my pockets, sliced a hole in my pocket, stabbed me in the hand, tried to cut my thumb. So I'm a little concerned by the by that detent. Not as strong as I would like. Not even close, honestly. It's probably the weakest detent I've ever had on a knife that I've owned. Everything else on the knife I really actually like a lot. The blade steel is CTS XHP. I don't know if you can see that right there, marked on the blade. It came with the lightning strike carbon fiber filler tab there too, as well as an original OD green scale and a titanium filler tab. It's a very comfortable knife. The only thing that kind of gets you is this tab right here where it sticks up. That will dig into your palm a little bit if you're using it, I think, for a long period of time and using it hard. It's probably going to be fairly uncomfortable. And the other thing is that the draw cut grip is not very comfortable because the flipper tab really digs into the web of your hand right there. And so that is not very comfortable. You can kind of grip it back farther and it's not as bad. A little bit awkward of an angle when you do that, but it won't dig into your hand then. Every other grip though, the hammer grip, the pinch grip, the saber grip, some people call it the Hollywood knife grip or something like that. But anyway, all of those are very comfortable. Definitely like those. It's got a good heft to it. It's a very solid pocket knife. Takes up a decent bit of pocket real estate, but I don't necessarily mind that. And just very sturdy and very smooth. The knife rides on nylon washers, which I actually kind of ragged on William Henry for using those, and I wasn't a big fan of that, but I think they're executed better in this knife. They're only about half as thick as the William Henry knives, and so you can't even really tell that it runs off of nylon washers unless you really look. And they're wide enough as far as circumference goes that you don't have to worry about a lot of blade play, and they're thin enough that there's not a lot of give to them, but they do a good job of making the blade nice and smooth. It's a very hydraulic feeling knife. It was a misfire on my part. The only real downside I have with this knife is, why does it even have a flipper tab? I don't understand why it even has one, because you have to work pretty hard to get it to open that way. It's actually easier to open it with the thumb stud consistently every time, because you can kind of push in this direction and kind of preload it with pressure, whereas with the thumb, with the flipper, you have to try really hard to preload it, and then it doesn't always work anyway. So if you're gonna make a flipper, a knife that is a flipper, please make it so that it flips. Otherwise, I can understand why you would want to just cut this off, because it really serves no point. Maybe if you have to stab something, that really locks your finger into place and it prevents you from slipping up on the blade. But as far as an opening method, it's not that great. It really isn't. You either have to do it just right, or you have to give it some wrist. And I just don't know why you would do that. So kind of get the negative out of the way on that, and everything else about this knife is very well built. It's just very thick, very solid. Probably not the best slicer with this blade geometry. I know he makes he has a grind called the slicer grind, and that probably works a little bit better. This is the only actual Hinderer I've ever handled. But if it's sharp enough, it will cut fairly well, but it still will not slice like a thinner blade. But if you look at that tip, you can penetrate with that. Definitely, you could realistically pry an elk pelvis apart and not mess up your knife. Always one of my biggest fears would be that I would break a tip off my knife, and so I don't pry with my knives very much, if at all. But it's this knife tip and the steel, I believe it is I'm doing some reading, and it's similar to S35 VN, and so it's a little bit softer. It's not as brittle as some steels like S110V or something like that, and it takes a very uniform edge, a very keen edge. And I think with that little bit of flex in the steel, you can pry, and it's not going to break it unless you really do something honestly kind of dumb with it. But hard use, yeah, I think you could definitely qualify this as a hard use knife. nice solid lockup. I know a lot of guys would say that lockup is too late, but I honestly have no problem with that. In fact, that's kind of where I like a lockup to be. Maybe I like 40 to 50%, even upwards of 60 or 70%. I'm fine with that. Yeah, it might wear out faster, but realistically, we're talking about a long period of time before it actually does wear out. And so I'm okay with that late lockup because it's more secure. You know, some knives, they come out and their lockup is like this, and it's just barely locking up at all, and that seems kind of sketchy to me. I think I would just rather pass on that. I'd rather have a more solid lockup. And so I'm okay with that. I like the lockup. It's got good tension on the lock bar, and it has the lock bar stabilizer kind of hidden behind the pocket clip here. And so you can't overextend it, which is an issue with some knives. And then it just kind of falls closed. Very, very smooth on these nylon washers. Very smooth. Definitely, again, the most hydraulic feeling knife that I've ever had. There is resistance, but it's extremely smooth resistance. Extremely smooth. And with the wicked edge that I was able to put on it, let's see if I can actually get this on camera. This is literally the sharpest knife edge I've ever made in my life. It does not take very much for even one of my considerably pretty fine hairs. I've got fine hair. It does not take much at all for this knife to bite into it just by dragging it across. You can kind of see, maybe, I'm not sure if you can see that or not, but anyway, it's got shaving, curls coming off of the hair. Very, very keen edge. How long will it hold it? I don't know. I've never had a knife with CTS XHP steel. Never had that. As far as the mods done to the knife, this is the first time I've also had lightning strike carbon fiber, and it is cool. I do like it. I know it's definitely more expensive than regular carbon fiber, but I think this is a tasteful upgrade. It avoids the warranty. They don't allow, Hinderer doesn't allow you to modify your knives in any way and maintain the warranty, so that's done. It's also been anodized out of house, and so the warranty is double dead, but it doesn't really affect the knife itself, and if you take care of it, this knife is going to last a very, very long time. I like the detail with the standoffs here. I just kind of like the way those are machined and milled out. And it's the first time I've also seen this design. I've never seen this before. I don't know if it's really visible or not, but there's a pin inside of here on this side of the knife. Here's the screw. And that is the stop pin that keeps the blade from closing too far and hitting the spacers right here. The standoffs, rather. And if you look, the flipper tab, it is just, it is right there. There is a very small amount of room there for the flipper tab to get by. Very well designed there. Just don't extend your choil, because that stop pin actually rests right here at the end of this choil. And so that's what, if you were to make that choil bigger or longer, your knife would close onto the standoffs, and you would have 1 or 2 or 3 nice little dings in your edge, which would really ruin your cutting ability. The pocket clip has been anodized with some kind of pattern. I can't make out what it is. I asked the guy I bought it from. He said it was like that when he got it. It's not the Hinderer logo, and I just can't quite tell what it's supposed to be. It's pretty cut up. Maybe it's just some sort of splatter pattern is really the only thing I can come up with. But it looks cool. It's got some wear on the pocket clip, but that's okay. I'm perfectly fine with using these knives. And the thumb studs ambidextrous thumb studs serve a dual action as stop pins. When the knife is open, the lock bar is pressing against the tang of the blade here, and the stop pins are pressing against the frame, and it results in a pretty solid lockup. This knife has just a tiny bit of up and down play. You can barely feel it, but I think it's just due to the fact that this is a little bit older lock. It's been pretty well broken in, pretty well used. There are definitely some, a little bit of marks on the blade and that kind of thing. It's been used, and that's fine. I think that's what a knife is for. But overall, I definitely like the Hinderer. I like the knife, I like the design, but I think that lack of a detent might be kind of a deal breaker for me. And when I can go and purchase a knife that is designed by Rick Hinderer, and oh man, can't even open it after playing with that Hinderer. It flips. It just flips. Very similar in design, very similar in size. Obviously, this is the Eclipse, kind of a spin-off of that, and this is the XM-18. So they're different knives, but they're also they are very similar, being designed by the same person and having a lot of similar kind of design aesthetics and different things. The handle shape being similar. That is, I will say, that is the other thing I've noticed about Hinderer knives, at least kind of the XM and Eclipse lines, is that the blade is a little bit small in comparison to the handle. I'm not a big fan of that. I like a good blade ratio to handle. And so the knives with little blades and big handles, I'm not a big fan of the way those look. They don't necessarily function any less well, but I just don't like the way they look. And so that's a little bit of a downside for me, but it's not bad on these knives. It's not egregious. It's not enough for me to just want to get rid of it. And if I can buy a very well built knife in pretty much the same price range, very similar in design, designed by the same person even, and have it operate better, I'm going to prefer this knife, because while they both have flipper tabs, this one flips and this one doesn't. And I could get past the flipper, but I don't like it. I don't think I like it well enough to pay the money for this knife. Now I guess, this is a third generation, and I guess they've improved the detent, but still, at this point, this particular knife, I'm not interested in using it long term, because it's got that weak detent. I'm afraid it's going to come up in my pocket, and with this kind of an edge, if it's sitting in your pocket here and you reach your hand inside to get it, it will bite you, and it will really bite you well. And with that detent being so weak and tip up carry, I just don't like that. Obviously, one nice thing is you can flip the pocket clip and have tip down, and if I were going to keep this long term, I would probably do that, even though I don't prefer tip down carry, because I would rather have a knife that's being carried tip down than lay my finger open to the bone trying to pull it out. But otherwise, the detent and maybe the blade to handle ratio aside, this really is a great knife, and I look forward to maybe getting a 4th generation Hinderer at some point in the future, and maybe in the slicer grind, because it would probably slice a little bit better, and that's what a knife for is for cutting. If I want a pry bar, I'll go find a screwdriver, or maybe even work really hard and go find an actual pry bar. But I do like the way that this edge looks. See if we can get in really close here. That is a nice edge. I like the way that looks. And boy, will it cut. It will cut. The thickness of the blade might kind of get in the way, so it's not going to slice as well, but it will cut things. It is very sharp, and it will definitely cut things, and I like that. It's what a knife needs to do. So anyway, there are some thoughts on the Hinderer XM-18. I'm a fan, just not that big of a fan, but they are sure really nice knives. Anyway, there it is today.